really, really shocking. I didn't even know he was ill. And frankly, Dokpesi has touched many lives. Many people would not have achieved their dreams of becoming broadcasters if not for the revolutionary steps that he took in the early 90s when government decided to deregulate the broadcast industry. We would have been saddled with NTA and NTA and NTA. But he got onto the scene and Nigerians began to see 24-hour television. You know, some people saw it for the first time in their lives, and that communication has really, really revolutionized the sector in many ways. And such achievement could not have been recorded if not for the giant steps that Dokpesi took. He was a pioneer. He took a risk, because when you are coming to a new line of business, for somebody who was working at the MPA, he took a risk getting involved in broadcast journalism, and today he has given himself immortality in our country. It can never be forgotten. So I wish him eternal rest in the bosom of our Lord, and I decree peace to members of his family, his immediate family, you know, who now have to bear the pains of this irreparable loss.
Right. Wale Adoye, what do you make of the passing of High Chief Raymond Dokpesi?
Well, that is the penalty we all need to pay for the privilege of living. At one point or the other, I mean, one will have to leave this world. The important thing is that I think he has left a legacy that will remain forever. As far back as 1994, he set up the Ray Power, and then in 1996, AIT, the first private radio station in the history of radio communication in Nigeria, and the first satellite television station that is, even as of today, is broadcast in America, the Caribbean, and also in Europe. And also, it was not just in the field of media, it was also the first to set up the first shipping line, indigenous shipping line in Nigeria. He's a man of accomplishment, even though he died at 71. But I think remains an evergreen. It remains an evergreen reference in terms of achievement. So his death is shocking, but we have to accept it as something we cannot do anything about. And I wish his family, and the media, the strength to be able to shoulder this tragic loss. Absolutely,
and of course not forgetting the staff of his media entities, that's Ray Power and AIT. Of course, this is a significant time in Nigeria's history, talking about the Inauguration Day, and of course they are part of the several media crew who are all over bringing information, and now they have to do their duty with this big loss. We pray for the repose of the soul of Raymond Dokpesi. All right, it's the beginning of a new dawn in Nigeria as President Bola Ahmed Tinubu takes over power from former President Muhammadu Buhari. In his inaugural speech, President Tinubu promises effective governance that will bring more prosperity to Nigeria through the remodeling of the country's economy. Let's hear from the president.
We shall consult, and dialogue would never dictate. We shall reach out to all, but never put down a single person for holding view contrary to our own. We are here to further mend and heal this nation, not tear and injure it. In this way, may arguments regarding the election that brought us here today to this junction. Yes, it was a hard-fought contest and was also fairly won. Since the advent of the Fourth Republic, Nigeria has not had an election of a better quality. I said so. The outcome reflected the will of the people. However, my victory does not render me any more Nigerian than my opponent. Nor does this render them any less patriotic. Our mission is to improve our ways of life in a manner that nurtures our humanity, encourages compassion towards one another, and duly reward our collective effort to social ills that seek to divide us. Nigeria will be impartially governed according to the rule of law. In our administration, women and youth will feature prominently. Our government will continue to take proactive steps such as championing a credit culture to discourage corruption while strengthening the effectiveness and efficiency of the various anti-corruption agencies. That will be a continued work in progress. Security shall be top priority of our administration because neither prosperity nor justice can prevail amid insecurity and violence. To effectively tackle this, we shall reform both our security doctrine and its architecture. On the economy, we target a GDP not less than 6% growth. We aim to accomplish all of this by taking the following steps. Budgetary reform, stimulating the economy without engendering inflation. Industrial policy to utilize the full range of domestic manufacturing and lessen import dependency. The electricity will become more accessible and affordable to businesses and homes alike. Power generation should nearly double, and transmission and distribution network must improve significantly. We will encourage various state governments to continue to participate in this effort, power generation and distribution of their own.
President Tinubu there in his inaugural speech earlier today, where, of course, at the Eagle Square in Abuja at his inauguration. And there were several takeaways from that speech, even though it trickled down from his Renewed Hope campaign, which also was made him emerge victorious. So let's talk some more about what Asiwaju Tinubu has said so far. And the first in that soundbite that we showed you was the issue of the elections, this particular cycle of elections that brought him or made him victorious, even though he acknowledged the intense battle from his rivals.
Yes, and he recognized the rights of those who contested against him to go to court, and he said the fact that he has won the election does not make him more patriotic than them. He was saying the right things, that look, I will defend your right to seek legal action, to try and prove that you won the election. And apart from that, he praised the man that he has succeeded. He described him as a very honest lover of our country, and he promised that women and youth will feature prominently in his administration. Physically challenged people also want to feature, because inclusion is the name of the game now, and you can see that even the former president of Kenya advised him to reach out to the opposition so that peace can be guaranteed in our country. President Tinubu also expressed his joy about the smooth transition from President Buhari's administration to his, and he said that has become the character of Nigeria. By saying that, he's saying, look, the world now knows us for peaceful transitions. We didn't see soldiers going to the Eagle Square to arrest him, as some Shakabula preachers had told us would happen. We didn't see interim government suddenly happen. We didn't see military handover. We saw a civilian to civilian transition, and it was done in a very smooth manner, in a manner that makes us proud as Nigerians. I mean, if you ever thought that joining the army was such a bad thing, the show that the military puts on display today will make anyone want to be a soldier. The way they were marching, everything just went smoothly, So it is something that Nigerians should be proud of, that we put on this kind of show before presidents of the
Absolutely.
world. They were watching, and I'm sure the feedback that they got was positive, because before this May 29, we were told all kinds of things will happen and all that, but to the glory of God, no one has lost his life. The transition went on smoothly. Mr. President also promised that electricity will become more accessible and formidable. It's a good thing now that the Buhari administration has amended the laws to allow for states to generate their own electricity. So hopefully we'll get to that point when electricity will be more accessible, and we'll have different sources of electricity explored, because we've not really explored other sources like hydro, like wind, and the rest of them. Hopefully under its administration, steps will be taken to do that. And he also talked about multiple taxation, that they are going to look at the issue of multiple taxation. He said that his government will take steps to make food available I think this is very important. Food inflation is literally running riot in our country. So whatever steps he can take, I know he has talked about commodity boards. Commodity boards were used during the First Republic. So I think Ashwaju is trying to achieve some measure of price control, especially for essential commodities, so that people can have food in abundance. And then he promised to continue the achievements of President Buhari on infrastructure. That also resonates with me, because when you look at President Buhari, the greatest achievements, in my view, that he has recorded are in the area of infrastructure. People may not give him credit for so many things, but in the area of infrastructure, I think President Buhari has done well. And this new president has promised to sustain his achievements in that area. He also said our administration shall govern, not to rule over Nigerians. This suggests that he will respect the rule of law, and he will continue to take feedbacks from the public. It's important to communicate with the people. It's important to know what the people want and what they do not want. You've got to be a listening government. And he has made it clear that he will govern the people, not rule over them. So I think that conveys a very strong meaning in terms of the kind of administration that intends to run.
All right, let me quickly come to Abuja studio now, where we have Mojid Dairu, a newspaper columnist, also joining in. Let's bring you in now to, this leg of our discussion, looking at that document or the speech by President Tinubu titled The Nigerian Ideal. Of course, he started off by saying nations other than Nigeria would have crumbled with the hardships the country has survived, and now this is like the proudest moment of his life, not just his life, but Nigerians. How do you reflect on that speech?
It is conciliatory in tone, it is patriotic, and it is very statesmanly. It is also very reassuring that we have a president that intends to govern and not to rule over the Nigerian people. But most importantly, the inauguration speech of the president speaks to the integrity of his manifesto, his renewed hope manifesto, upon which he ran for the office of the president and got elected, because a major part of the speech was simply a reaffirmation of some of his campaign promises, and which conveys the impression that we might just have a president now who says what he means and means what he says. And he said some very far-reaching things in that speech. He basically laid the philosophical foundation for his administration and, by extension, the ideal Nigerian nation. He talked about social cohesion and national unity. He talked about fairness, equity, and justice for all Nigerians, irrespective of ethnicity, creed, or region of origin. And he laid out, in broad terms, a Marshall Plan for the resuscitation of the Nigerian economy that is quite ailing. And that was why he admitted that what Nigerians have been through in a couple of years before now would have imploded some other countries. So that is like a tacit admission that things may not have been as well as it should be. And thankfully, the speech is also devoid of any form of divisive rhetoric, as well as all forms of blame games of the past administrations. He conveyed the impression that he was a man who was hired to do a job, and he's aware of the enormous responsibility ahead of him, and he's taking full responsibility for those responsibilities. And that is one thing that a lot of Nigerians are looking forward to in the apex leadership of this country. And so To that extent, it was quite reassuring. And if he's able to match these words that he spoke today with actions, deliberate and purposeful actions, I think he might just be able to achieve his objectives of leaving Nigeria in a much better place than he met it whenever he bows out of office. So I think it's a very good speech that was quite reassuring, and I'm sure it would have signaled in many Nigerians a renewed hope of some sort that will be further renewed if he matches his words with action.
Right, Ms. Dairo, let me put you on hold and come back to the studio to get the take of Wale Adeoye here. Of course, he spoke to the key problems or challenges before the country, one of which is security, of course, and he promised to beef up the entire architecture and doctrine of, security across the country.
I think one of the major problems Nigeria faces today, security and economy. And I'm impressed by his position on security. He used the word reform the security architecture. And I think that is promising enough. And I also think on the economy, he spoke about unified exchange rate, which I think is a major plank that is needed to make Nigeria grow. You can't be selling dollar, 700 naira somewhere, some other place 750, then official rate is about 450. That will, create a lot of crisis, and that's the challenge we have been having for the past 3 decades. He also said he will reduce interest rate to increase investment, and also we address the issue of GDP, which I think these are very important issues. Well, it is important in the sense that the person talking to us is an accountant. We have listened to leaders in the past who are soldiers, who are this and all that. But an accountant is somebody who understands the figures. That speech is not flamboyant. It's not, when we read it, this is not somebody just giving promises, but simple, precise, and direct. And he also said that this is just a guide, that the main policies will come, in days ahead. So I think we have a kind of renewed hope. And like Babajide said, the smooth transition is a plus to the democratic content. You could see that Buhari and also President Buhari and the new president, they came with their wives and children, which tells you the family content or the transition itself, which I think is very important for us as Africans. And I hope that in the next few months, we'll be able to hold him to his words. I personally believe that having an accountant to lead this country is a new thing, And he also spoke about people in the Niger Delta, in the north, in the east, talking about uniting all of us together, to ensure that our shared aspirations, our common fears are addressed. We cannot judge people just by the speech they've made, but at least it's something that we can hold a leader, we can hold him on that speech. I think it's a promising speech, and I have confidence that based on his precedents, we should be hopeful that the next 6 months, 1 year, we should be able to begin to see, some changes in this country. Yeah.
BK, among the takeaways, and of course, newspapers, media outlets are already leading with with the headlines, the issue of fuel subsidy. He never shied away from that subject, and he also gave mention to it in his speech. Of course, saying that, okay, thanks to President Buhari for announcing the phasing out of the fuel subsidy regime, but then he will take it further.
Yes, I think it's important to let Nigerians know that the decision to remove subsidy was taken by the immediate past administration. The appropriation law that we are still using is the 2022 appropriation law. And it is that 2022 appropriation law that has been extended. For the 2023 budget, no provision was made for subsidy. So technically speaking, subsidy was being removed by the previous administration. That decision was taken to remove subsidy effective from the 2023 budget. So, President Tinubu has no new decision to take. The National Assembly has agreed to the idea of subsidy removal. It just happens to be somebody who come into office, and it is in his time that that decision will be implemented. Government is a continuum. President Buhari can take a decision that he may not even be in office to implement. You've seen that happen. Talking about GSM, for example, GSM, it wasn't the government that implemented it, that actually initiated it. Projects are initiated, some taking 4 years, 5 years, long after the government that initiated it had left office. It will now be implemented. So that's the way I see subsidy. The decision, so when he says subsidy is gone, is referring to the decision that had been taken to remove subsidy even before he took power. So based on the 2023 appropriation law, subsidy is gone. And the finance minister has talked about that, a number of times. So look, there's no going back. We've taken a decision to remove subsidy. So if anyone wants subsidy restored, they will have to go through the National Assembly. But the point I'm making is that by the time the 2023 budget gets implemented, subsidy is not provided for, not appropriated for in that budget, because that collective decision had been taken to remove it. And I'm happy all the contestants were in agreement that subsidy had to go, because it's not even it's not benefiting the poor. There are some people who sit down somewhere and are becoming billionaires out of these subsidy bills. So that has to be addressed, whether we like it or not at some point, because a country that spends 6 trillion or plans to spend 6 trillion on subsidy cannot be taken seriously. Why did we have to let things degenerate to this point? The World Bank has already projected that we are going to spend 100% of our revenue to service debt. How did the debt come about? Every little expenditure on infrastructure, we think that the best thing is to go and take a loan. And that's why the IMF suggested to Asiwaju that he must address the problem of revenue generation, because it's that insufficient revenue generation that is pushing us, as well as the subsidy, that ensures that money that can be used on projects, on healthcare, on education, gets diverted to servicing consumption. So I'm happy that they suggested to assure you that, look, address revenue generation, because it will then enable us to find the funds to fix critical infrastructure without having to go cap in hand begging for money. We have even reached a point whereby creditors are running away from giving us loan. The Chinese the other day turned down a loan request. Everyone can see that the capacity to pay is not really there, because if your budget is on deficit by more than 11 trillion, it's something to be worried about. Where are you going to find money to pay if we just keep taking loans? Because it's not even the principal that we are talking about, it's still the interest that is gulping about. I think the last time I checked, 96% of our revenue went to debt servicing. So the World Bank has predicted that 100% of our revenue will go to debt servicing. So what do we then do? And we are spending 6 trillion on subsidy. So it's a tough decision to take. Otherwise, Nigeria will go bankrupt. That was what Sanusi said the other day, that we have a tough decision to take. This president will have to take big decisions. It will be tough in the beginning. Nigerians must be ready. It will be tough in the beginning. When the final analysis, Nigerians will see the benefit of those big decisions. Good leaders are never afraid to take the big decisions because they know that they are taking those big decisions in the interest of everyone.
All right, Mr. Dahiru, let's bring you in at this point now. This issue of fuel subsidy, there was mention of it in the president's inaugural speech. But what do you really think?
I'm one of those who, the concept of subsidy for energy, good products and services, and for food, for housing, healthcare, education, is not in itself something that is bad. It's part of the component of welfare responsibility of government anywhere in the world. However, we have a peculiar problem in Nigeria where the subsidy on petrol, for example, is one that is an aberration because Nigeria is an oil-producing country that ordinarily should be refining petroleum at home, enough for local consumption and export, not to pay subsidy on imported petrol. So I think beyond removing subsidy, we need to address the issue of self-sufficiency in refined petroleum products at home because the president talked about electricity being available and affordable. The same thing has to also go for energy products and services from fossil fuel because together with electricity, they form energy. And energy is a matter of national security, which must be available and affordable at the same time. So sometimes you may need some level of intervention from government by way of subsidies. But given these current circumstances, the subsidy management in Nigeria is one that has been shrouded in a lot of opacity, corruption, and non-accountability. And so the president campaigned firmly, unequivocally, on the fact that he was going to remove subsidy. And all I said, his inaugural speech speaks to the integrity of his campaign promises. And this is one of his campaign promises. He was very bold and frontal about it. I may not agree with it. I do not agree with it. I have a different idea about this. But this was what he said he was going to do. And interestingly, his two closest rivals for the presidency, the candidate of the PDP, Atiku Abubakar, and the candidate of your party, Mr. Peter Obi, similarly campaigned on the same promise, on the same pledge, to remove subsidy in absolute terms, meaning that Nigerians overwhelmingly voted for the removal of subsidy. So what the president has just done today is just to simply grant Nigerians their wishes. But I'm not one of those Nigerians who voted for the removal of subsidy because I think subsidy is a bad idea. No, I just think that it is not being properly done in Nigeria. And I also think that we need to see an energy master plan that clearly spells out a roadmap for energy security in Nigeria, which must necessarily come with some level of government intervention by way of subsidies. All over the world, subsidies are paid for energy, for food, and for some other components of welfare for citizens. But in the case of Nigeria, the man that has become president today campaigned on this and won election based on this promise. And so he's bound by his words. He needs to remove subsidy as he has promised. Whether the removal of subsidy might create problems, which I foresee, additional problems, then we will now begin to suggest ways to mitigate those problems in the future. But he has done what he has promised to do, and that speaks to the integrity of his campaign promises, and probably to his own personal integrity. And so, for that, he has simply fulfilled one of his campaign promises. And he has a lot more campaign promises that he has outlined he intends to fulfill. And I must point this out. He talked about the reduction of interest rates by the CBN. I think that is one of the most far-reaching and most progressive propositions I've heard so far in modern times. Because we cannot continue to maintain a double-digit interest rate on borrowing. So meaning that while he's removing subsidy on petrol, for example, which is like the live wire of Nigeria's SME, he's also proposing a reduction in interest rate, which might mitigate the cost of production that might be associated with the removal of subsidy. He has also talked about an availability of electricity at an affordable rate. So I think taking all of this together...
We'll continue our conversation on Journalist Hangout. We'll continue dissecting the president's inaugural speech, but we have to take this break. Please stay with us.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
His Excellency, the Senate President, Senator Ahmed Lawan, and Speaker, House of Representatives, Femi Bajabiamila, invite the general public to the commissioning of the National Assembly Mosque. The ceremony is scheduled to take place on Friday, the 2nd of June 2023, at the premises of the National Assembly Complex at 12 noon. The mosque project was funded by Muslim senators, Muslim members of the House of Representatives, and Muslim management staff. Announcer, Senator Ibrahim Shekaru, Chairman, Mosque Construction Committee.
This is the University of Africa. On the streets, you get your real education. Here, everybody has a degree of something. But the most important qualification is imagination. Her reason to imagine is slay. His reason is to be the GOAT. Theirs is to take the beat and make it lit. They want to test edgy till it is fire. Their reason for imagination is to add riz in style. Her reason to imagine is finesse. And hers is to find what's new and bussin'. So no matter what your situation, just use your imagination.
Thanks a lot for joining us again. It's Journalist Hangout special in commemoration of Nigeria's inauguration. And of course, as you must have been following, the new president has been sworn in. Bola Tinubu at the Eagle Square earlier today also gave a speech titled The Nigerian Ideal, and that's what we have been dissecting here on the program today. Let's bring in Dario Dufo, who is also a journalist, a senior journalist at that, to speak to some of the issues that stand out for him. Hello, Dari. It's good to have you join us. If you can hear me, what are your takeaways from the president's inaugural speech?
Thank you very much. I can hear you very clearly. And thanks for having me. I would say that listening to the president today, I felt quite relieved because he is coming into office with a clear idea of what is to be done. And if you peruse that speech very well, he touched on almost all issues that are of concerns for Nigerians. Take a look at the issue of oil subsidy. He's taking the bull by the horn with his statement that oil subsidy is gone. He's making it very clear and clearing all doubts about what will happen to that policy. And he went on to talk about the Naira issue. And he did say that it will be reviewed. He made it clear that both old and new currencies will be legal tenders as far as his government is concerned. And he made the much expected promise that the issue, the policy, will be reviewed and necessary steps will be taken to ensure that it is more people friendly. He said it that whatever the good idea behind it, the implementation was too harsh on Nigerians. And of course, he did not leave out security. And he made a very robust promise to tackle insurgency and other criminalities anywhere in the country. And these are issues Nigerians look forward to a government that would, do what is needed. And he spoke about the economy. If you look at it, a lot is expected from him as far as the economy is concerned. People are waiting for him to come repeat the magic of Lagos at the national level. And it appears he's not going to disappoint, given the way he has started. we have a speech you can sit down with, digest, and have takeaways. Whatever your view, whatever your expectation, if you look at that speech, you see that the incumbent administration has its eye on the ball, and the expectations won't be in vain. And a lot of Nigerians are waiting on President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to actually turn things around. And that's my takeaway from this. Actually, is the fact that he's setting his priorities right, very of the and this is good for all of us.
Right. While I do, so on this issue of fuel subsidy now, we just before the former president left, he presented a bill of a loan that he got from the World Bank that seeks or aims to address welfare concerns that may arise as a result of the fuel subsidy removal. And talking about continuity, it's currently before the lawmakers, but about the concerns that some may have, Mr. Dariru said something about the concerns he has about, the impact of the fuel subsidy removal. But do you share these concerns as against the necessity behind the removal?
There's no way subsidy will be removed that there will be no, that we are not going to have some challenges. But I think it's interesting that the president is frank, is honest enough to tell us that, look, this is what I want to do. And I think he spoke about how the funds that will be saved, will be invested into education, infrastructure, and agriculture. So it's going to be tough. Don't let us deceive ourselves. Because if you look at the way the country is today, things are really down. And he's coming in at a time that I really don't envy him. He's going to he needs to work extra hard to turn around the country. It's not going to be an easy thing. Security challenges are there. Economic problems are there. Our debt now is about 77 trillion. In 2015, when President Buhari came, we are talking about 9.7 trillion. The GDP is contracting, now about 2.3%. Small-scale enterprises drop almost about 2 million of them are they are off the radar. Because of, apart from COVID-19, then the CBN policies that came in recently. But he spoke about cleansing. He used the word house cleaning within the banking system. So I believe that if we can block the loopholes, if we can tackle waste, if we can get the right people who are selfless, to handle these critical areas, initially it's going to be very tough, but at the end of the day, it's going to be better for us. Like I said, when you have a president that is an accountant, he knows about the figures. You can't just come with one policy and say, look, let us devalue the naira. Then he'll be asking what are the implications. He already knows. One of the strong points of Awolowo was that not that he was just a lawyer, he was also an economist. He read commerce. So for having an accountant, I believe that, he should be able to understand the implications of some of these actions, because Nigerians are waiting for transformation economically in their own lives that has been, traumatized for the past 1 year. So I have confidence that if we have the right people, reforming the CBN, in the banking sector, agriculture, palliatives, and then small-scale industry. He spoke about promoting domestic manufacturing. If those manufacturing companies can come, and he spoke about jobs. Let's say we are going to get about billions of people getting jobs, to improve the economy and also to create a situation where more families will have access to opportunities. I think the country will be able to, to improve in the economic areas. But like Babajide said, it's going to be the first 12 months. We need to prepare to fasten our belt before we can begin to see the dividends.
And also from that inaugural speech, BKO, the president said in his words, our government will work with the National Assembly to fashion out an omnibus jobs and prosperity bill. He spoke about his desire to create 1 million jobs within the ICT industry alone. And of course, the issue of jobs is also one major concern. 1 out of 3 persons are said to be unemployed in Nigeria.
Yes, it's something that he has to address, and he has to find the right people, to work with him. I've said that, look, Nigeria has quality manpower. Some of them are abroad. I know that the president traveled abroad on a number of occasions. Every time he travels, the naysayers conclude that he went to hospital. But Tinubu has met some of the diaspora Nigerians that he wants to bring into his administration. He is a master at discovering talents. And I can tell you, he already has an idea of the people that he's going to use. He's working with some of them. And the excitement of young people to work with the administration is there. People will discover that in the coming days. A lot of them think that young people do not want to have anything to do with this president. But they are going to discover that the excitement to work with this administration and change the fortunes of our country is there. And is met with people who will be part of his administration, who will work with him, either as cabinet ministers or in other categories. He has an idea of what he wants to do. He's a smart man. He is quick thinking. So sometimes his ideas may seem crazy to people, but that's because you do not know him. And at the end of the day, those who argue with him, this will not work, this will not work, they will see that in the fullness of time, that policy will work. So Asiwaju is not afraid to take big decisions. They will fight him, but at the end of the day, such big decisions yield dividends. And I know that he has plans for young people. He brought young people into his administration. He created the idea of one day governor of Lagos that afforded 16-year-olds opportunity to run Lagos for one day. So he's always done that. He's the first person to come up with the idea of paying WAEC fees for indigent students. Many people will not have been able to get into institutions of higher learning were it not for the fact that government helped to pay their WAEC and NECO fees. So this is the person that is coming, that has taken over power today, and a lot of us are positive. Falana said Nigerians should challenge Asiwaju, remind him of his promises and all that, keep him on his toes, so to say. I also support the idea. We must keep our leaders on their toes. Asiwaju has made big promises that I'm convinced will change our country in many ways. It is our responsibility to put him on his toes, remind him at every turn that, Mr. President, you promised this. When is it going to happen? Back in 1999, Lagos was full of fields. I think I've even given this testimony before. I was editor of PM News. And I remember Osekome, the lawyer, calling Asiwaju the absentee governor. But by the time he got his policy right and came up with this idea of private sector participation in refuse evacuation, come on, refuse that used to be the height of as high as a skyscraper, they all disappeared. Lagos now began to have just litters. My office used to be where Sweet Sensation is now in Ogba. There was a big refuse in front of our office. One night, that refuse dump disappeared to not materialize anymore. It may not get the solution right immediately. But I'm confident that he's going to ultimately solve a lot of those big problems.
All right, gentlemen, that's all we have time for on this subject, of course. But then there will be, other opportunities to dissect the president's speech and, of course, talk about expectations of many Nigerians. But long and short of it all is that the president has said these Nigeria ideals will be the Nigerian reality under his watch, and we honestly wish him well. But now let's beam our searchlight on the Muhammadu Buhari presidency, which ended earlier today. In his valedictory speech to Nigerians on Sunday, the former president scored his administration high on economy and insecurity, assessing that speech, of course, and that's what we're talking about now. In the end note of that speech, the former president said he was leaving the country better than he met it 8 years ago. Mr. Dahiru, what do you make of the former president's valedictory speech?
Contrary to what the former president said about leaving Nigeria better than he met it, I think that he left Nigeria worse than he met it in 2015, and all the indices and indicators are clear in this direction. I mean, Nigeria, most of us are Nigerians. We know the condition of the country in 2015. As bad as it was, what he has left behind is worse than what was in 2015. And I don't think we need to belabor ourselves interrogating that claim, because it is all too clear. Is it insecurity? Is it the economy? Or is it corruption? In fact, so bad was the outgoing administration's performance that even the president that has just been sworn in today had to run on a mantra of renewed hope. It was like a conscious effort on the part of the ruling APC to say, yes, we may have dashed the hope of Nigerians when in 2015 they trooped out in their millions to vote out an incumbent PDP administration of Goodluck Jonathan, to vote in the opposition candidates, then General Muhammadu Buhari, into power. That hope may have been dashed. That change revolution was betrayed because of the underperformance of the outgone administration. And so it is clear that contrary to what he claimed, he is leaving Nigeria worse than he met it. And everything indicates that much. But for me, I would like us to interrogate some of the reasons why President Muhammadu Buhari, or former President Muhammadu Buhari, failed to achieve his three key campaign promises of fixing the economy, containing insecurity, and taming the cancer of corruption. In many of my write-ups and public commentaries, I've identified the president's sectionalism, his elevation of sectionalism to a near state policy as his greatest undoing. Sectionalism breeds corruption. Sectionalism breeds mediocrity and incompetence. Sectionalism divides the people because it makes the government unable to impartially enforce law and order, because under such a system, some Nigerians are more Nigerian than the others, while some are less Nigerian than the others. And so that in itself will heighten insecurity. And for me, we need to use that as a reference point for the new administration of President Ahmed Bola Tinubu. If there is one thing he must avoid in his engagement as President and Commander-in-Chief, is sectionalism. He must eschew all forms of tribalism, nepotism, religious bigotry, cronyism, and favoritism on the basis of ethnicity, religion, or region of origin. Thankfully, he spoke that much in his speech. And from his antecedents, he's a great manager of diversity. So if he's able to get it right,
all right, Mr. Mojid, we would have to end our conversation with you at this point. I'm terribly sorry for the interruption, but we really have run out of time, and we want to get final takes from the gentlemen in the studio. Mojid Dahiru, newspaper columnist, thank you very much. Quickly on the issue of the legacy of the former President Buhari, what's it like for you?
Well, I think for me, if you look at infrastructure, you give it to him, railways, airports. But in terms of managing the economy and security, I think only Nigerians will score him very, very low. If we look at our debt when it came in, 9.7 trillion, now we are about 7 trillion. And then more people, in the north, we have about 86 million people that are poor. in the south about 35 million people that are poor, even by statistics from the government itself. So I think Nigerians are crying. We are in a state of stupor, economically.
But he alluded to the COVID period.
Yeah, yes, that is true. There are some natural things that came in, that one could not help it. But the reality is that Nigerians are passing through very difficult moments. We just need to admit that. But we can't also dismiss the fact that he tried his best in some other areas.
All right. BKO, among the gains of the former president, he spoke about the Electoral Act and the fact that the elections, this past elections, were the best in Nigeria's history. What do you think?
I think the presidential election, in my view, was the best. Because I looked at the way the election went, those who lost, the caliber of people who lost the election, the caliber of people who won the election, or Okada rider getting elected into the House of Reps. It's never happened before. Forget what the naysayers are saying. It's because their favored candidates lost. An election in which 7 governors couldn't get into the Senate. It's unprecedented. An election in which 12 APC governors could not win for Asiwaju in their states. An election in which Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, with his close pal, Nasiru El-Rufai, as governor of Kaduna, Asiwaju Tinubu won only one local government in the whole of Kaduna State, and that was Gwari, that he visited late that night. So, in my view, yes, they did well to a large extent, but to say he left Nigeria better in infrastructure, yes. In economy, no.
All right.
In many other areas, education, no. So I don't think Mr. President was right, and I've always said that he should leave us to judge him. No, let's put this one in. I've always said, let Nigerians judge you. Don't judge yourself. It makes sense to let us judge him rather than say, oh, you left Nigeria better than he made. When he got into office, it was 180 naira to $1. Today it's 750. All
right, gentlemen, we have run out of time. BKO there, Babajide Kolade Otitoju, Dare Odufo, of course, Mr. Mojid Dahiru, who joined us from Abuja, and last but certainly not the least, Wale Adeoye. We thank you all for speaking with us on this special edition of Journalists Hangout. Of course, you can watch tomorrow another episode that is of the program, and you can also watch a repeat broadcast of this episode tonight at 11. And join us on Sunday, of course, from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. for Journalists Hangout on Sunday. We're on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. From all of us here, many thanks for watching. I am Kemi Foladiemo. Bye for now, and God bless Nigeria.
Mayor.
Oh, I wish you were here.
I'm always with you.
But it's not the same without you.
MTN 5G's amazing technology will change how we experience life and the internet. Get ready to encounter the incredible, and remember, no be juju, na MTN 5G.
At TVC News, wherever the big news story is happening, we're geared up to break it. TVC News, first with breaking news.
The Deputy Governor of our dear state being sworn in today alongside his brother, is here with his family, the wife of the Deputy Governor of Abia State.
And indeed, other members of his family, they are here to celebrate another beginning of a successful and dutiful tenure in office. He is here, Mr. Deputy Governor, and his wife, Mrs. Oluremi Hamzat.
And she's being welcomed by the head of service of Lagos State, Mr. Akim Muri Okuola.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Governor, sir. We thank you.
Congratulations, Mr. Deputy Governor. The governor, who has done tremendously well and has resoundingly been returned as governor of the Center of Excellence and State for Aquatic Splendor. A man of vision, a man of ideas, a man who makes Lagos and is always thinking of how to make Lagos rise higher and higher and higher. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please, let's welcome Mr. Babajide Olushola Sanwo-Olu and his family, alongside his lovely wife, Dr. Mrs. Claudiana Ibijoke Sanwo-Olu, First Lady of Lagos State.
To the saluting dice for the salute.
Show the arms! National salute! Present arms!
We all rise up for the national anthem. That was the Executive Governor of Lagos State, Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu. The Parade Commander, Superintendent of Police, Azubike Dibio, approaches Mr. Governor to seek permission to commence the parade.
2023 Inauguration Parade, mounted by the establishment of Nigerian Police Force, Lagos State Police Command, made up of 4 guard commanders, 8 sub-guard commanders, standard parties, and 168 other ranks. Parade form, ready for your inspection, My Excellency.
Mr. Governor is proceeding to the reviewing vehicle, which will take him round to review the already formed up parade. As we can see, the Executive Governor of Lagos State, Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu, is about commencing a review of the parade. The vehicle of Mr. Governor is being flanked on all sides by officers of the Nigeria Police Force. The overall parade commander, like I said earlier, is Superintendent of Police Azubike Dibio. He hails from Enugu State and studied political science at the Lagos State University. He enlisted into the Nigeria Police Force on the 1st of May 2002.
Orchestra, let's go.
Compatriot, Nigeria.
Orchestra, let's go. Orchestra, let's go.
We're waiting for the orchestra. Please take the national anthem. Now, the orchestra, please.
Arise, O compatriots, Nigeria's call, obey, to serve our fatherland with love and strength and faith. The labor of our heroes past shall never be in vain. To serve with heart and might, one nation bound in freedom, peace and unity. O God of creation, direct our noble cause and guide our leaders right. Help our youth the truth to know. In love and earnest
Nigeria, Ìgbéga ìpínlẹ̀ Èkó.
Ajumosheni. Please can we put our hands together for Mr. Governor, Mr. Celebo, Mr. Babajide Olusola Sanwo-Olu. At this point in time, to formally welcome each and every one of us to this inauguration ceremony,
please welcome the head of service of Africa's most proactive civil service, the irrepressible Mr. Akim Muri Okuola.
The former governor and the immediately returning governor of Lagos State, Mr. Babajide Olusola Sanwo-Olu, and the First Lady, his darling wife, Dr. Claudiana Ibijoke Sanwo-Olu, the Deputy Governor, the returning Deputy Governor of Lagos, Dr. Kadri Obafemi Hamzat, and his wife, Mrs. Oluremi Hamzat, the Speaker of the Lagos State House of Assembly, Right Honorable Mudashiru Ajayi Obasa and his wife, the Chief Judge of Lagos State, Honorable Justice Kazim Alogba, members of the diplomatic corps here present, former governors here present, and their former first ladies, former deputy governors here present, and their spouses, members, elected members of the Lagos State House of Assembly, His Royal Majesty Oba Rilwan Oshuolale Aremu Akiolu, ably represented here by his White-Card chiefs, led by the Okpelua of Lagos, Chief Lateef Ajose, chairmen and members of statutory commissions,